a little bit about Bill, and then I'll let him talk about himself here. But he's a great candidate. I've been telling people everywhere I go that this guy's going to win, and I believe it. I know this district. I know the people in this district, and I know what this guy's been doing. He's working like a slave. He's going to be 20 pounds lighter in a couple of weeks. I'm telling you, because he's working so hard. He's got a great message. He's a great friend. Support this guy. It's filthy.
Sure, like many of you, I took it really hard last August when Stan was defeated in that recall election. And after a lot of thought and prayer, I came to the conclusion with my wife that it was time to stand up and do something. And so we made the decision back then, and we've been preparing. And what I can tell you right now is I'm very optimistic. My wife is Sue Colby-Fian, and together we own Sue Colby Salon in Days Pond, Alaska, and we also own the Salon Professional Academy, which is a cosmetology. So I've been a small business person most of my life. I started my first small business when I was 27 years old. It was a lawn care business. And after that, I had a partnership in a bar and restaurant. And for the last 18 years, I've been a salesman in the food industry. And so I've traveled a lot of this district. Back in the day, I used to ride with the Reinhardt salespeople, and probably been in most of the kitchens of every restaurant and school and place that serves food in this part of the state. So I'm a little bit familiar with this part of the state, and I'm very familiar with what it takes to have a small business to create jobs and struggles that average people face as they're trying to build those businesses. And I don't think my opponent has a clue about what it takes to turn our state around. In my view, we got to have pro-growth policy that help businesses grow and create jobs. And when they create those jobs, guess what happens? They lift people off of our government safety net programs like food stamps and Badger Care, and they make them taxpayers. That's how we're going to solve the kind of budget problems that caused so much turmoil in our state in the last couple of years. And I'll say a little bit more about that. Governor Doyle and Jennifer Schilling increased spending 11% in their last 2 years as governor and assemblywoman from across. 11%. While the U.S. economy was going into recession, people were losing their jobs, taking pay cuts, people on Social Security and disability and fixed incomes weren't getting increases in their payments. They increased spending 11%. They created this problem. More recently, we had a tremendous opportunity in Wisconsin for economic growth and job creation. How many people here heard about the iron mine that was proposed for northwest Wisconsin? That mine was going to create almost 9,000 jobs, $34 million a year of tax revenue, $1.5 billion of annual economic impact for our state. And it was going to be built in one of the most economic depressed parts of our state, where many people are dependent on those government support programs. There were going to be 1,400 jobs in that mine that paid on average $83,000 a year in wages and benefits. She voted against it, and that was the decisive vote. So why would she vote against it? I think it was out of partisanship. I don't think the Democrats could stand the idea that our Republican governor and our Republican state legislature were going to have that kind of success. And I think there's also another aspect of it that is really quite shocking to me, and that is that they ignored the pleas of the labor unions to pass the bill for the month. They ignored the leader of the laborers union, Lyle Balistreri, 15,000 laborers he represents. They ignored him. He wanted to see that mine. They ignored Terry Monahan, the head of the operating engineers union, when he brought his people to Madison. So Jennifer Schilling chose to side with extreme environmental interests that didn't want that mine under any circumstances. Some people say, well, wasn't it going to be bad for our environment? No. That whole project had to be pre-approved by the DNR. And when it was over, we would have had a lake that became another resource for that region of the state. In fact, we've got an old iron mine called Lake Wazee up by Black River Falls. And I've been there, I've swum in that lake, it's crystal clear, people fish and camp there, and it's a great resource to the community. So we need leadership in Madison from people that understand that we can't raise taxes on business and increase regulation on business and expect that companies are going to want to grow here or come here. And this is another failure of my opponent. She and Governor Doyle created a new tax, because when you increase spending 11%, you got to raise taxes too, right? So they created a tax called the combined reporting tax. And what it did was it taxed Wisconsin-based company sales globally. It's a $22.5 million tax increase for Harley-Davidson. $22.5 million in 1 year. And you know what Harley-Davidson said? We're not having it. We've got manufacturing plants in other parts of the country. We don't have to stay here for this. So what did Governor Doyle do? He ran down there with $25 million in tax incentives to try and keep them from leaving the state. Now that's not right. When the government is picking and choosing which companies pay taxes and which don't, that's just not right. If there's a tax, then all companies should have to pay the tax. So the other thing that came from that is Harley-Davidson ended going back to their union, enforcing wage and benefit concessions on them. Not a very good outcome. And there's another company called Mercury Marine. Same thing happened there. They got their tax bill for combined reporting. You know what they did? They went to their union and they forced them to take a 20% reduction in wages and benefits. So what we can really see clearly from here is that when the Democrats talk about taxing big corporations and rich people, the truth of the matter is the taxes ultimately hurt average, hard-working people. It's the working people that ultimately paid those taxes and paid the price. So what I'm here to tell you is that I believe we need more competitive tax policies in Wisconsin. We need to ensure that the regulations we have in place make sense and that they're not too burdensome, so companies like Ohebik Taconite are willing to come to our state and invest $1.5 billion in an iron mine that lifts our state's economy. And I'll just say one last thing in closing, and that is recalls are bad government, regardless of which political party is behind them.